I always think of the GS1100E as a kind of a time capsule of the 80s, the memories of the 80s, things that bikes were like in the 80s. And you could watch this in 4K. All you have to do is adjust your device. Well, it's 40 degrees now, early in the morning. We're going to wait a little while, let it warm up a little bit. It's supposed to go to the high 40s, maybe the low 50s. But the thing in our favor is it's sunny, and it really looks like we're going to have a good day this afternoon. There's zero chance of rain. You almost never see that in the weather forecast. Zero chance of rain. Now, certain things about 80s bikes I really liked. The early 80s bikes, you could see the motor. Almost everybody that had a love of aluminum and loved to polish the motors up, whether you had a Triumph or a Harley or what, but the GS had a very attractive motor. Also, the bikes of this era, they were making leaps and bounds in technology, and for the first time after I had H1s and H2s, I got on this bike and I said, holy mackerel, this bike is just the best of all worlds. It's comfortable, it's fast, it shifts nice, gets good mileage, even though the gas of the era was cheap. The 80s was such a wonderful time, and so many things to remember about it, including this bike that I bought new in '82. I had a 1000 Suzuki before this that I traded in, and back then I wish I would have kept the 1000 too. I had turned my bike into a West Cooley bike, and one for the late Frank Straub, and those two bikes, they're two bikes I'm sorry I sold. But looking back, my collection is one bike from every 10-year period, and I wish I had more 80s bikes, to be honest. The 80s was a very special time. So a quick check of the weather. It is still a few leaves everywhere. Not many left though. We're at the end of the season. The weather is supposed to be just one word, cold, and no chance of rain. And that's perfect for me. I picked a couple flowers. There's 5 flowers left for Karen. And get the bike ready, have my final cup of coffee, and get out on the open road. So what are you going to be baking while I'm out riding, baby?
I'm going to bake an apple cider donut cake to bring to Darlene and Ken.
Apple cider donut cake?
It's like an apple cider donut.
A giant apple cider donut.
Absolutely delicious.
I can smell it while I'm getting ready to go out on the open road. Boy, that went together pretty quick, huh?
A few minutes.
Few minutes.
I had to grate the apples, so that took a long time.
Yeah, I know the apples are a big problem. Hey, I got to get out on the open road. The road is calling.
When you get back, the cake will be done.
It'll be done. Okay. I can eat it.
No, you can't eat.
Now, back in the 80s, one of the things that was a little bit different than today, the tires were not quite as good, not even close. And they hadn't invented traction control yet, so there was a lot of thrilling moments. And just like any time capsule, if you made a time capsule of the 80s, you'd have to put some ET cards from the drags there, because everybody was overwhelmed with ETs. That's all the magazines talked about, who had the best ET at the drags. And it worked. They sold a lot of bikes. The drag races were crowded. Every time you went, they were packed. And the Suzuki pretty much was it. And even if you didn't drag race, or even if you didn't race at all, one of the things everybody loved about this bike was the low-end torque. And one thing about this bike, I don't know how many others experience the same thing. It's 42 years old. over 78,000 miles. And one of the things, the suspension is still held up pretty well. I'm amazed. That's one of the amazing things. Because I get on modern bikes, and this bike is not a whole lot behind it. And with all the miles, nothing seems to have given up the ghost. I guess Suzuki got that part of it really right. And somewhere in that time capsule, there must be a list of bikes that had good seats. My RD has the great seat. Bikes of this era had great seats. I don't know if they forgot how to make seats or if they make them too thin now, but these bikes, super, super comfortable. And back in the 80s, I used to love to go up to Lake George for the weekend, see my friends who had a house up there. We'd ride that area. Oh my God, what great memories. And this bike was such a big part of it. And because we didn't have computers back in the 80s, we had all the magazines and with all the ETs and all the horsepower ratings and all the gobbledygook of the time. And it was really fun. And I don't really know, to be honest, what year they actually started calling bikes like this super bikes, maybe somewhere in the 80s or the 90s. But to me, this bike was such a leap forward from bikes I had had in the past. In every way you could measure it. From the day I bought it, it impressed me no end. That every time I'd get on a bike, take a long ride, I'd get off it, I wasn't fatigued. It wasn't taking me broke buying gas or parts or tires. Every possible thing that could be good about this bike is good. Another memory from the time capsule, Westwood Suzuki, where I bought a lot of bikes, including this one, and Hank and Barry. Always fun hanging out there. Honest dealership, always got a good buy on the bikes or anything you needed. Thank you, Hank and Barry. I don't know, some bikes seem to have a gas tank that you wish it was 1 gallon bigger. This is the only bike I have that I have 200 miles of range, and I never have to worry about finding a gas station. And if you already own one or have owned one, then maybe unfortunately you sold yours. One of the things I am glad I have a parts bike to support this, and I'm going to try to keep this time capsule alive. I hope eventually it's going to outlive me. We've been lucky enough to take advantage of a lot of nice days here in the fall when it's still rideable. There's still some leaves somewhere, and the roads are a little slippery in places, but every day you can get out on a bike, get the exercise, get the fresh air, and have a great GS1100. Makes it so much fun. So I'm freezing cold on this ride, but I come home to a nice warm, and I mean this, the house smells like
Apple cider donut cake.
This is a big, giant apple cider donut. Oh my God, it looks so good. I'm hungry. And for each person, each age group, that time capsule is going to have different things in it. But for me, this is part of my time capsule. One of my favorite times of being a motorcyclist. And thanks guys so much, thanks one and all for watching.